I'm Charles Thomson, the co-founder of the Stuckist art movement, and I'm here with Joe Machine and with Ella Garou, who are part of the initial group of 13 in 1999. Stuckism was founded to promote certain artists doing figurative painting, and Stuckism is a bit opposed to conceptual art. So we're going to look back over 15 years of Stuckism. Now, Joe, you've made the point about protests, saying that they're important because we protest against the Turner Prize, but that's not what the group's about. Would you like to say what the group is about?
Yeah, I think that obviously the protests were inevitable, but I think the group is about, as far as I'm concerned, finding yourself and an expression of yourself and the world around you through the medium of painting, basically. I think that's certainly one of the initial things that attracted me to the group in the first place. It gave me a platform to express myself through that medium, which was certainly a lot more constructive than what I was doing before. So yeah, I mean that's the initial thing really that made me want to come along and take part.
And you said basically the important things are the psychological, spiritual and personal aspects. Do you want to just touch on the spiritual and psychological aspects of painting?
Yeah, I think the thing is, for me, I've always been a self-confrontational painter. This sort of stuff happened when I was a kid, as well as a reaction to basically the violence I was subjected to as a child and the stuff I saw going on all around me, and making drawings of the things that I'd seen was the only way that I could find that I could express myself. And I continued doing that over the years. So it was godsend when I became involved with Stuckism, because, as I said earlier, it was a way of me continuing that process. And I think it has been for a lot of other people, that I was able to bring out what was inside me and visualise it in that form of visual art, in that sense, and therefore move on to other aspects within art as well, to embody I'm painting scenes from the Book of Genesis at the moment. It's obviously my version of this stuff, and seen as a failure, at least a failure of mankind, to tell a sort of very human story, and to get these thoughts and ideas out there on the canvas, and to link them up with not just everything else that's going on in my life, but everything else that I could see going on in the world around me. As Stuckism has that platform, it has that balance, because it's not just one specific form of painting. For example, you couldn't say that it's just self-confrontational art, because not everybody's doing that. Everybody has their own style, everybody has their own way of working with things, and there's so many different styles, and I think that is the strength of Stuckism. It's not just one thing.
Ella, we've got Protest, a group that does protests and demos and publicity, and we've got a group that does painting. And how do those things relate? How do you see them?
Well, the protests have got attention for the group when the group has done the protests. I've often been on both sides with that sort of. The protests are good because it's publicity, but then bad because people think that's all we're about. They see clowns and they think, oh, Stuckism is just clowns. But it's got the name out there, and it's got some people interested in looking deeper. It would be good if more people were interested in looking deeper and seeing the paintings and seeing the sort of things that Joe was talking about, because there's way more to Stuckism than protesting. It's a lot deeper than that. Am I answering the question?
Yeah. I mean, the thing about demos, I remember when we first did the clown demo in 2000 against the Turner Prize at the Tate, and your big worry was that people would only think we were clowns. Well, in 2003, I think it was the end of 2003, the curator from the Walker Art Gallery came into the Stuckism International Gallery that I was running in Shoreditch and said, I'd like to do a show of your work at the Walker. I saw you first of all because of the clown demos, and that interested me, so that kind of worked.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, having kind of co-founded the group and taken on some responsibility for that and the artists, I then had to get that work out there. And I think I didn't set the rules, I didn't make them up, but I know what they are, and you've got to get in the media to get attention. And to do that, you've got to do something that works in the media, and the clown demos obviously did. I mean, I would say that we're demonstrating against the Turner Prize because we're opposed to the Turner Prize.
Absolutely.
We haven't done anything we don't think. I'd rather not have done that stuff. In fact, I don't know if I'm going to carry on doing it. I'd rather just present the work, that's it. But that's what we were doing already, and nobody has taken any notice.
Yes, exactly. Yes, you had to do something to get the name out there and then get people looking.
I mean, the whole rules of how you go about doing art and presenting it now has been set by Saatchi and the YBAs and Damien Hirst and then Tracy Emin. It wasn't like that previously. I think you put your work forward previously. Now you put your promotion, your PR forward. The difference is that the Brit artwork was the gimmick, whereas for us the work was never the gimmick, it was the other activities which were the gimmick, which we could have actually put forward as conceptual art.
I think that's right. I think those demonstrations, what they did is that they established a spearhead, and what we have then is you're backing up your argument. The demonstrations have been political. That's great because it's part of Stuckism, because it's multifaceted. As I said, it's spearheaded the movement, got it in the papers, but there is an actual point to what we're doing and to what people are doing, because we're a group of extremely driven people who could have been doing all manner of different things. There's a huge diversity within Stuckism, but these people, most of the people involved there, they are outright painters, and they've chosen to paint, and that's what they choose to do with their lives. And for most of them, there is no other way. And I think that was the big thing with me with the demos, is that you drive the vehicle in through the gates, break down the castle gates. Once you're inside, then you prove that you have got a point, and that's what we are and have been able to do. And I think Stuckism, in a strange way, has always been around, because Stuckism just is. It's a name now, but we are a tradition, and I think that is our strength.
Well, let's look at personal relationships with the group. Well, Ella, you were in the group in 1999. You're still there. Why are you still with us? Because various people have dropped out, and there's been various arguments and disagreements, but you're still there. You're a stalwart. Why? Why are you still there?
Why am I still there? I haven't got a good enough reason to leave.
Fair enough. Other people seem to have done. Joe, what about you?
Yeah, again, I've seen Stuckism as being a revolutionary movement, and I always had a problem with authority when I was a kid, so I was very keen and able to get involved with that sort of thing. And I think you have a responsibility. Once you join something, you're a part of it. You have a responsibility to carry on, and I think certainly that there are people that have left the group, and if they've left the group, I'm sure they've had their own reasons and they've needed to leave, and that's absolutely fine. But the people that remain in the group, I think, remain because they want to be in the group.
And I don't want to just leave it as saying, there's not a good reason for me to leave. There's a good reason to stay, which is that I do believe in the sort of things that Joe is saying about the expression, the passion, the expressing yourself through painting, which is what Stuckism is about, and expressing your life through painting, and if you're not particularly good with words, showing things through pictures, and expressing yourself, because you've got to do it. You're driven, the way Joe's saying, driven to do it. The motivation for doing it is that it's what is inside us, and we've got to get it out. So I feel the same way that, how Joe has put that about your experiences, what you see, putting it onto the canvas, it makes sense of the world, and then people look at it and they get what they get out of it. They might not get your meaning, but they'll get their own meaning out of it, and you're communicating something to people through pictures.
So you've got like-minded people and a kind of environment formed by the group which is nurturing of the work.
Yeah.
What about looking at initial expectations, how you went into Stuckism first of all, what's happened since then, and how has it affected your work and your life?
All DIY movements, you're doing it because you want to do it. I don't think that anyone in the beginning of Stuckism had expectations. I think we all were painting, we all were fed up with the art world. I didn't have any expectations, but I liked the others' work, and it was good to be part of something, and we were all expressing ourselves. I don't think there were expectations. It wasn't like, this is going to be this or that. It was just what it was.
I say one of the things, when Stuckism started, nothing happened for a few months, from January till about August, when I got a small piece in the Evening Standard Diary. That was the first media mention of this group.
Yeah.
Because Tracy Emin was nominated for the Turner Prize that year.
Yeah.
But during those few months, you and I went
Building the website.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
your idea to get a website, I thought it was great. I couldn't do it, but you did.
Yeah.
And I had a tremendous feeling that this small activity of constructing the website was going to go out much, much wider. It was like, really, I don't know if you had that feeling at the time, or whether it was just, another website as far as you were concerned.
Well, it was important to have the group on a website. Sexton and I had websites. I was doing web design at the time, so it made sense to have a website. But it's amazing how it's spread all over the world through the website.
Did you ever think it would have that kind of response? Because, I mean, on the Facebook group, there's about over 1,500 people belonging to the Stuckism Facebook group. Did you think it would have that kind of interest?
I don't think I really thought about it at the time. I mean, it's amazing that it's happened this way, and it's continuing to happen, and there's more people all the time hearing about it, and more things happening in different countries around the world. But I don't know if at the time I was sort of thinking of the future. I was just thinking this is now and this is what we're doing. But I think that's the essence of Stuckism as well. It is about, we're not about ambition, we're about doing what we do, and if it gets attention and it's successful, then that's great. But we would still be doing the art anyway. That is the essence of Stuckism that we would create. But you want to communicate to the world what you've created. You're not just going to sit there with your paintings in a room by yourself. You want people to see them because you're giving something to people. The images you're giving, like music gives something.
And sharing.
To people. Sharing. You're sharing, yeah. You're sharing with people.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
important to me when I'm doing something. I'm doing what I want to do, but I'm thinking I want to relate to other people.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's important for you. I suppose it's important for you as well, Joe.
Well, absolutely, because this is what I'm talking about with tradition. It's not just the fact of creating a painting, although it's a wonderful thing. You know, I look back on my life and I think to myself, like, I've been locked up. Different things have happened to me in my life. I know what it's like to have my freedom taken away. So for me to be able to sit down in my kitchen in my house and do a painting in my own time, and with my children running around somewhere in the house, it's about as good as it gets. I mean, when I think that I could be locked up, I could have gone on drugs, anything could have happened to me. And this is why I do feel this kind of duty of care towards, still being in the group and. Everything that's happened, there's a responsibility there. You start something, you have a responsibility to see it through, and this is, I think this is what really drives me to maintain contact and to be involved. And I think it's not just the painting; it's the people that are around the painting. What's the painting without the person that looks at the painting? I mean, I come at it from the angles. I don't come from an art education sort of background. I never went to college or university or anything like that. But I suppose with what I'm doing is more akin to what people were doing really in the kind of what the hunters and gatherers and scavenger people were doing in the old sort of Stone Age times. They're making paintings of their life and putting it on the wall, the thrill of the hunt or whatever it was, the mechanics of life. And this is what I'm doing. I see a lot of other people involved in Stuckism that are doing that as well. But it's not just that. They've blown it open. There's all sorts of stuff in there's a depth to the vast majority of Stuckist paintings that you just don't see elsewhere in the art world at all.
Yeah. I'd like to look at whether belonging to a group, reading manifestos or whatever, has affected your work. Now, I know at times I've started to get perhaps a bit technical and kind of thinking about proper ways of doing stuff and drawing and starting to feel a little bit inhibited, and and a bit seized up perhaps, and then thought, look, the Stuckist Manifesto says basically just kind of go for it, so I've just gone for it. In fact, I suppose I've found it has had a kind of freeing effect. It's made me just do something, and the bit in the manifesto about not being afraid of failure has been quite helpful, rather than thinking, oh my God, someone's going to look at this and judge it. It's like I've gone more inside me and thought, what do I need to do, rather than is someone going to approve? And usually when I do that and I think I want to do this painting, I really want to do it, but people are going to think it's crap. And I thought, well, never mind, I'll just have to do it and they'll have to think it's crap. And when I've done that, usually people have turned up and said they really like it. So it's been quite helpful in overcoming some of my inhibitions and perhaps some of the things I've taken in through one might say, a kind of strict traditional approach to getting everything right, perspective and anatomy and so on. That's an effect on me. How has Stuckism affected you and the way you work at all?
Well, it's very encouraging being part of a group, being in communication with other artists. I have some good friends in the group, and rather than working in isolation, you've got that feedback with other artists, and you're sharing with them, and how it's affected how I work. I mean, my style has changed a lot, as has Joe's, but I think that's just what I would have been doing anyway. I have had times when other artists might have influenced my work. I did a picture once that it was someone drinking some absinthe in front of a Paul Harvey painting, or there was something sort of Paul Harvey style in the background, so I was bringing in a bit of influence. Elsa Dax inspired me to start doing tarot cards, painting tarot cards. That might not have happened if I wasn't part of Stuckism.
Well, it wouldn't have done, would it? I would have thought it would.
Well, I don't know. It might have come about doing tarot cards by some other route,
Right.
but I don't know. You don't really know, but that is what happened. Elsa inspired me to start on that. We were involved in a project of a Stuckist tarot deck with 22 artists. And the question was how it's influenced.
Well, I think one thing that happens is people do get ideas. It stimulates, it's a catalyst. For example, Joe's early painting of Diana Dawes with an axe.
Yeah.
I thought, that's a great idea. You put an object with somebody and immediately you completely change how that person's seen. Diana Dawes with an axe. So I actually then did a painting of a woman with a rat on her breast. It was actually a woman's idea to pose like that. But I kind of got that idea from looking at Joe's and then adapting and using it. And I think at one point you talked about using black lines, you'd seen me using them. I mean, have you picked up ideas? I mean, you talked about the catalyst of the tarot. That was a catalyst for doing stuff.
Yes,
so that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. I think when people work in a group... and
Sorry, I'm going to have to turn that off. Sorry about that.
Right.
One thing we forgot to do when we started was switch phones off.
It was making it a kind of weird little whistling noise.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's just a message alert. Very sorry, you might have to edit that bit out. I'll just put it on silent.
I think I'll just keep it running.
There we go, yes.
So,
anyway,
I think
we're talking about...
unless people do influence and act as a catalyst for each other, I don't think the group's really working properly. And I'm sure that's happened with other groups in the past, like Impressionists and Surrealists.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Whether consciously or unconsciously. Have you experienced that or kind of got an idea? Or
Yeah, I think there's been an obvious cross-pollination of ideas, I think, in some of the leading Stuckist work as well, because it's like what you were saying about your work and the bold lines, and when we went through a stage of kind of doing that sort of thing. But it's not just about what you see other people doing, because I have very, very little contact with any other artists, not just Stuckist artists, but any other artists, because the contact is the paintings, the contact is the kind of group and the paintings. But I think I get more influence through talking to people. I mean, my initial involvement in the group was through the painter and poet Bill Lewis, I became part of the group through my association with Medway people, Bill Lewis, Billy Childish, people like that. I think I was kind of more influenced and have been more influenced over the years by what people have spoken about as regards to their work, rather than what's actually in their work. There's maybe unconscious elements or unconscious things that I probably do in my paintings which are similarity to other people's work. But there's just, as I said there earlier, there's an element in Stuckism that I don't see in a lot of art. Certainly that's out there in the world today. That there is, you've got an intellectual side to Stuckism, and there's a very honest, individualistic way of approaching the paintings, and I think each artist, each person that are involved is totally unique. But there is, as I said, this pollination of ideas, cross-pollination. I've done a lot of work with you, for example, over the years with inner guide meditation and Kabbalah, which has been intrinsic to the way I paint now at the moment with doing the Genesis series, which is, I'd like to think in some ways that what I've tried to do is try to walk before I could run with a lot of this stuff, because there was a lot what Stuckism, I think, is, and associations with groups, and that the people in the group has taught me to do, is look at not just my life and look inwardly, but also look at what's affected my life from the outside as well, and look at other things, other disciplines like psychology, like religion, all of this sort of stuff. And you don't have to sort of become totally obsessed by one thing, but just have elements in it. Whereas there's a lot more, my work's a lot more symbolic now than it ever used to be, and I think that's certainly a result of the stuff that you and I have done over the years, the work that you and I have done. I mean, the paintings, some of those paintings are arranged almost like the Tree of Life, and that's obviously deliberate. But then again, you find that there are things that appear in paintings sometimes that come up totally unconsciously. I was never too struck on what Billy used to say about having this immediate access to the unconscious. You can only access the unconscious in oblique ways. Nobody has immediate access to the unconscious. Load of bullshit. It just what basically happens is you come in from an oblique angle. What you access, or at least what you think you're accessing at the time when you're working very quickly, is you just access the pre-conscious. That's all it is. And the unconscious stuff, it comes out in dreams and maybe slips of the tongue or whatever it is. But it's weird, because sometimes it's like your paintings with the objects that to me have such a strong archetypal significance in your work. I often find there'll be objects appearing on the floor in my paintings, or stuff that I just think, why is that there? What have I done? And I know people like Bill Lewis do the same thing. It's the same sort of process. And objects and things that will just turn up, and you have no idea why they're there at all.
I mean, let's sum up our individual work. And I would say for me, I'm trying to find a way of depicting different levels of experience and reality, the mundane, the everyday things in the world which we deal with, kind of psychological and the emotional response and experiences we have through relationships and disappointments or achievements. And then a kind of spiritual overview, trying to put that in a context of a much bigger view of history, humanity, a purpose in our lives, not just going up the shops or even having a relationship, but a whole life's purpose. What are we here on the planet for? And I'm trying to put those things and find a visual equivalent for them. That's what I'm trying to do in my work, in one way or another. And I suppose that's been fairly consistent. There's been some sort of stylistic evolution, which I won't go into here and now, but let's just say, trying to adjust those three things. What I've done recently is, I think, given a bit more emphasis to the emotional aspect of that. Perhaps I wasn't giving enough emphasis to it. So I draw on my own experiences and things around me, generally speaking. What's your work? Your work seems to have stayed in a very similar area of depicting the sort of alternative lifestyle, the demi-monde, the kind of transvestites, the kind of people in bands in Dublin
burlesque,
Castle,
performers. I'm still painting performers, still painting transvestites, male or female, female to male, male to female. But I'm doing tarot cards, which is getting maybe more subconscious, more narrative. There's a story. Each card is very personal about my experience, but it's also bringing in the other elements. With the tarot cards, I'm going deeper into myself and my experience, but also trying, because they're cards that people will use, so something that will also communicate to other people. And I'm being influenced a lot by an artist called Sue Kreitzman, who's an outsider artist. I've been doing some paintings of her, which are portraits, very colourful, very bright, but I mean, she's not a burlesque performer, she's not a transvestite, but she's very, very colourful, very eccentric. So I like that. I like colour, eccentricity. Yes, and the nightlife still doing that.
But that's quite interesting, because I've been talking about spirituality, however one defines that, and that's relevant to Joe's work, which I'll come on in a moment.
Yeah.
I've never thought of your work in those terms, but now you're talking about tarot and kind of representing archetypes.
Yes.
So it is present, and I know you've talked about Christianity and fetish clubs.
Oh yes, in the Last Supper, yes, because I did that interview when I was really doped up on tramadol when I just had an operation, and I'm afraid to read that interview because
So does
it was
Christianity
all
come
about,
into it? Is that important?
does Christianity? No, spiritualism, not spirituality. Spirituality,
Right.
not spiritualism. Spirituality. I don't think Christianity. No, but the Last Supper. When we were talking about the Last Supper, that came into it.
So the Last Supper, did you pick that because it had a spiritual subject and then translated it into the present day? I mean, is that relevant?
Well, I like to take old master paintings and bring them into the present day. I've done the Head of John the Baptist and the Last Supper. I don't know, how did that idea come about? We were at Elsa's drinking a lot of wine, and I think you were there, and somehow this idea came up to do the Stuckists as the Last Supper.
But you talked about John. These are Christian subjects. John the Baptist.
Yeah, John the Baptist.
Is it because they're Renaissance subjects, or because they're Christian, or is it, or they're archetypal, or what?
Well, I think there may have been a bit of exploration of Christianity at the time, but I think now, because I'm working on tarot cards, I'm going into something else. So yeah, there was a Christian element
But
to
it does seem you're going beyond like nightlife into something.
Oh yes,
else.
yes.
Is that
yes.
conscious or?
Not really.
No.
I just paint what I am inspired to paint.
Okay.
I get an idea and then I've got to start on it, and I don't sort of sit there and I don't have an agenda or a. Yeah, it's just what I'm inspired to paint.
Let's, Joe. I want to look at the evolution of your work, because I think out of the Stuckis, it's probably the most striking development from starting out with very bleak subjects, which Robert Janus in the Stuckism International book characterised as complete hopelessness, like people trapped in darkness and despair. He saw this as very bleak. I always saw it as containing the possibility of redemption. These are kind of sailors and prostitutes and blowjobs and a lot of anguish. And then all of a sudden, nature paintings started appearing. And then out of that, we've got paintings based on Genesis, which are almost like early Renaissance in their kind of purity of colour and feeling. They've got an exquisite sort of otherworldliness about them. That seems to be an amazing, like, story that you've gone through. How has that happened?
Well, as I said earlier on, it's about kind of walking before you can run, and I think all this stuff with me was a process, because I had all the stuff to deal with from my life when I was involved with crime and burglary and all the sort of violence and all that kind of stuff. And I was always a very extremely vulnerable, frightened child, and I probably still am a vulnerable and frightened man. And I think what I've tried to do in my work is show the journey from where you get from point A, and I don't know where I'm going, but what I'm trying to do is move through things in my life so that certain things in my life don't affect me and stop me and retard my my progress in life. And I think that's what I've done in the form of paint. I've been very lucky to be able to do that. But as regards to like the sailor sort of paintings and all that kind of stuff, I think Robert Janus, bless him, quite misinterpreted that. I know it's his opinion, but there's a lot of hope in those paintings as well, and those sailor paintings, because there's also, you know, he's talking about one aspect of them, but I show those sailor figures as well, with as me depicted as a sailor. You know, kissing my son, talking to my son, cuddling my daughter, that sort of stuff. So it's not just one angle. So, you know, but whether you're talking about the sailor work, nature work, Genesis, whatever other stuff I'm doing, it's all the same. I mean, you get violence in nature, there's violence in the Old Testament. You know, there's all of these stories. You've got everything is packed into them. What we're talking about here is a life cycle. Yes, of course there is despair. Yes, of course there is love. So I think there is, for me, there's no difference between the sailor paintings and the nature paintings and the Genesis. All is one, you know, and that's, I think that holistic idea is what I'm trying to work through and get at. Without any specific idea of goal, I'm trying to depict the journey, I suppose.
Right, let's look at the bigger picture. The spread of Stuckism internationally, there's lots of artists involved now how has that affected things? I mean, lots of people call themselves Stuckists because people can call themselves Stuckists like they call themselves Impressionists. Is that something relevant to you at all, or is something you think about? Let's have Ella on this one.
I think it's great that these groups have sprung up in other countries, and I think their angle on it is slightly different than ours because they're in a different cultural context, like in Prague and in Tehran. And I think they're producing some great work in some of these other countries. I think they're putting shows on, they're writing books. The Czech painters have put out books. They're very serious painters. There's been an exhibition in Tehran that some of the they tried to pull the exhibition. The government tried to pull the exhibition.
Oh,
did you not know that?
No.
Yeah, they tried to stop the exhibition, and then they banned some of the paintings. One of my duck paintings was banned because it was a picture of
a naked duck.
No, right. Duck rape. There were 3 ducks gang raping a female duck.
Does that happen?
Oh yeah, I took a picture of it in the park.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah. It's pretty violent. There's some violence for you, violence in nature. But I like ducks, and it was something ducks. Just doing what they do. But yeah, that painting was banned from the Tehran exhibition.
That's the first, I think.
Yeah.
The duck painting being
banned from an exhibition, and they hadn't even seen the title of it. They just could tell the ducks were mating and thought, we can't be showing that.
I wonder why they let people go into the zoos.
I don't know if they have zoos.
I would agree with you that the quality of artists internationally has been very high. I'm not saying every single artist that's involved with Stuckism is doing brilliant work, because there's so many people connected with Stuckism. There must be getting on for a couple of thousand, I suppose, around the world. But the leading ones, as you mentioned, Tehran and Prague, for example, and there were some artists in Germany, also kind of Australia. Godfrey Blow's still there.
Yeah.
A very high quality of work, which has surprised me, because it could be anybody joining.
Well, yeah, there are some very high-quality artists who have aligned themselves. High quality in the conventional sense. I want to say, quality. Who's the judge of quality, really? But I mean, someone like
we
John.
can all judge quality.
Well,
my judgment, your judgment.
In a traditional sense, someone like Jonathan Kudrill, he's a very proper painter. He's not an outsider artist. He's not self-taught, I don't think, because he paints like Salvador Dali. He paints very slick and paintings, and he's aligned himself to Stuckism. Guy Denman is I think his name's Guy Denning. Guy Denning, who has a lot of reputation in his own right. He's aligned himself to Stuckism. So you get people aligning themselves to Stuckism, and you get people who are more outsider artists aligning themselves to Stuckism. And you get people putting things on the Facebook group. I think recently people have been putting things on the Facebook group that make sense as Stuckism. There's a lot more of a lot of Stuckism to me still is the more outsider art. It's more obviously Stuckist to me if it's slightly raw and expressionistic or outsider type of art. But there was a point when the Stuckist Face group had a lot of people putting abstract paintings up that didn't, to me, seem to have anything to do with Stuckism at all. They just wanted to be in a group and have somewhere to put their pictures. So I think now more people are getting it, because what I'm seeing on the Facebook page is more work that you would look at it and go, well, that's Stuckist.
Yeah, well, I would say from the outset, we had a group of 13 artists that were the Stuckists.
Yeah.
Other people wanted to join, and I talked over with Billy, who was still in the group. He left after a couple of years, and we decided that people could found their own group and call themselves the Melbourne Stuckists, or the Tehran Stuckists, or the Prague Stuckists. They were independent, and they had their interpretation. Now, if their interpretation was that it should be abstract, and there were a couple of abstract artists right at the beginning in Australia, that was up to them. I wouldn't necessarily going to agree with it, I'm not necessarily going to exhibit it, but it's their choice. Also, as well as people defining it themselves, they could exhibit, stage their own exhibitions, do what they wanted to do. But it was stated from the outset that Stuckism was a figurative painting group with ideas. So I think what it's defined as is not stylistic, but the ethos is what defines Stuckism.
Yeah.
It's more akin to surrealism than Impressionism. Impressionism is defined stylistically. Surrealism is defined conceptually, philosophically. It has an ethos, an understanding of what they're trying to do. We're trying to do something which is expressed some deeper reality, some wholeness. We're trying to be honest to experience and communicate that, and that's the essence of Stuckism. As far as I'm concerned, that's what it was stated to be. And it's quite hard to communicate that, because you can't say, well, we all paint in dabs, or we all paint in Cubist idiom. In fact, we've taken the whole of modernism and remodernised it. We've developed modernism, and Stuckism is definitely a modernist group, not a Renaissance one. And from the outset, that plurality, that diversity was built into the first group. You had people that worked in an expressionist way, in a cubist way, in a traditional way, like with Renaissance standards, in a pop art way, in a naive way. And actually, if you analyse it, which I've done, it more or less balances out. There's like three people that are untrained, three people that went to college, three people with MAs, three people working in this way, that way, and another way. So there's a kind of balance from the outset. And that was, from my point of view, quite conscious to say, no, it's not one style. And if you put those paintings together in a show, then you see the connection between them. If you took any one artist and put them in another context, you would see some other connection. You could take a lot of Stuckist artists individually and put them in a Brit Art show, and then you would see what connection there was with those people, but it would misrepresent these Stuckist artists, because their real connection is with the other Stuckist artists. And that's always been the case. And there was a show at the Royal Academy, 1900 in art. And what's amazing when you see Picasso at that time with academic artists at that time is not the difference, but the similarity between them, the overlaps, because they're part of that time. We're part of the same time as the Brit artists, and we have things in common with those people. We're reacting to the same circumstances, historically and socially. I mean, we know some of the same people, obviously. I mean, Tracy Emin was part of the group in the 1980s. Well, she wasn't actually in the Medway Poets, but she was part of it.
She was around.
In the early 1980s. Comes from the same background, but took a different response. And as time goes on, that divergence becomes more and more marked. And what I'd like to do, actually, is try and see Stuckism in art history. I mean, I know how I see it, but let's see how you see it, Joe.
Sorry, so what...
So we're talking about the group as a movement. Historically. I mean, where does it fit in? Is it like one of the isms that's been in the past, or is it nothing to do with that? I mean, is it important, unimportant?
Well, I think it's incredibly important, because what I think it's up there with all of the great movements, and whether that be movements or isms or whatever categorisation people deem fit to give things in that sense. I think the thing that always got me about Stuckism is I think that the whole idea of just getting on with painting was very empowering to people, because especially for people like me, and I mean, even if you look at a lot of the early Stuckist work, like Ella's work and your work and stuff like that, you can see how people have moved on. It's been a real pleasure to be able to see how people have developed through the group over the years. For me, looking at people's work and seeing how, not everyone, but some people have moved on and they've upped their game and really refined the paintings. And you can really see that with Ella's work. It's really sort of like very, very well done.
Okay, but the end product of all that, set in a art historical context, where does it fit in?
Well, I don't know. As far as it fit, does it have to fit in? I think it's
going to be assessed in one way or another. People are going to write about it and say, is this, that, or the other? Or they're going to say it's irrelevant, or it's derivative.
I don't
fair enough
about any of that. I mean, it is because it's, it is because, as I said earlier on, Stuckism's always been there, because it's a tradition. Well, that's what we call it now. That's the name. That's the mask that we choose to hang on it. But it's always been there, because it's the nucleus of it is in every great movement. This connection that you have with both the self and the world around you is in every great movement. So that's basically all I've got to say about that, and the fact that it's an empowering group as well, because okay, you could look at some kid from, say, Canada on the other side of the world or something like that, or Iran or anywhere, and, looking at reading the manifesto and thinking, oh, right, they just get on with it, just paint. And you might look at that kid's work and think, oh, that's crap, or like it's like clever kid stuff, or art school stuff, something like that, and it's not very good. But 10 years down the line, who knows what that person is going to produce? And I think this is the whole thing about Stuckism. It gave people hope, and as it's moved on over the years, that is the empowering aspect of it.
So you're saying it's actually brought art back to an essence, to a mainstream, what art should be about, which the implication is that actually it's diverged from that. It's gone into some backwater or some cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
With Brit art?
Well, look, look at Brit art. What we're talking about with Brit art is a low rent, 2-bob outfit of oiks. Really, they've got these ideas, but there's no content. What you have with Stuckism is you have lots of ideas, but you also have the content with it to back it up. So that is the point of anchorage. With Brit art, there's no point of anchorage. These people like Sarah Lucas, she could be a greengrocer or something like that. It doesn't really matter. Or a stock market broker. With a lot of the people that are involved in Stuckism, you can see that is all that they're going to do. That painting is all that there's no other way. What they're going to do? Well, there's nothing else to do. They have to paint. They're driven people, and they have to paint. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but I think that's the thing that sets Stuckism apart from a lot of other groups and a lot of people, especially the Brit art sort of scene.
So Stuckism in art history.
Yes, yeah. I was going to. Yeah. It would. Yes, it would. I mean, we're doing it for the reasons that Joe says, because we have to do it, and whether we're some guy in Canada or Tehran or New Zealand or wherever, people are producing work because they have it in them to do it. And you don't know what the future is going to bring to them, but it would be nice one day to see some Stuckist work, in major museums. We had the Walker, we did the Walker show, and had our art hanging up there along with everything that's in the Walker.
Yeah, well, it's a major European museum.
It's a major European museum, but it would be nice one day for it to be recognised for what it is, and to be part of art history, and to have some of the paintings in museums and in the context of art history.
I mean, I don't see myself any doubt that it is a movement that will be remembered. It's already been recognised. I mean, it's in the Take Guide to Modern Art terms. There's an Oxford dictionary, concise dictionary of modern art. It's in there. It's getting in more and more books. It's being referenced. And obviously, I totally agree. We're painting because we want to paint in a certain way, which is what people have done throughout, modernism. The Impressionists painted in a certain way. They had a need. They had a drive. We're doing exactly the same thing. These other groups had a coherence. So have we. We're in a particular point in art history, which is basically the end of modernism, which led on to postmodernism. I mean, modernism was a series of movements of ideals. Postmodernism suddenly became very disillusioned with ideals because all of them seemed to get nowhere. Well, we're at the same point of reviewing modernism, but with a different response. Instead of saying we need to be cynical about these things, we're saying no, there's a lot of potential that's never been fulfilled in modernism, and that will take us forward into the next stage of art, and that's what we're doing. We're developing modernism. And it's rather like Wordsworth took the sonnet. Well, he didn't give up on sonnets because Shakespeare had written sonnets. He thought, well, Shakespeare's written sonnets, but actually I've got something else I can use the sonnet for. I've got something to say myself, and that's exactly what we're doing. That's the point of a language once it's been invented, whether that language is like minimalism or pop art or surrealism or cubism or impressionism, or expressionism, is to develop the language. That's when it reaches maturity and depth. The people that were writing in the English language before Shakespeare, before Wordsworth, before Byron, before T.S. Eliot, but each of them was able to build on that, and that's what we're doing. And like Joe said, that's the mainstream of art. That's the kind of essence of it. That's the point of it. Not to run away finding some gimmick to titillate jaded palates, which I think what art has sunk to. It's become, for want of a better word, kind of degenerate. It's become vacant, empty. It's lost its way, and Stuckism's bringing its way back, bringing art back to what it should be doing. I've got a couple of things here that were brought up which were suggested as subjects, which is the art world catching on to painting, and also it says here Charles's activities in exposing corruption in the art world. Yeah, I mean, I have done quite a lot of work on addressing certain problems. For example, the Tate Gallery promoting, buying its own trustees' work. And in 2005 that concerned Chris O'Feely's work, The Upper Room, and the Charity Commission ruled that the Tate had acted illegally, and in fact had been acting illegally for the last 50 years, so that was quite a result. Recently they're still promoting their own trustees' work and saying there's nothing wrong with that, that's not a problem. Well, I think these young trustees in mid-career shouldn't be there as trustees if they're going to have their work constantly promoted by the Tate. You know, you can't do two jobs like that. It's, even if there is nothing wrong, it's a national institution should be squeaky clean. There should be no appearance, suggestion or suspicion of wrongdoing, and there is all those things, and it's still carrying on. I don't particularly want to get into that because it's not what Stuckism is about. Let's just finish and sum up with something to say. Have you got something to say?
Oh, to finish off?
Yeah, to finish off Stuckism, anything you feel like saying at all.
Anything to... Oh,
could be
gosh.
to do with your move to Hastings or whatever, something to finish off. It doesn't have to be anything significant or amazing, but just a kind of farewell at the end of this recording.
Well, I'm glad to still be a part of it, and that it's still carrying on, and that it is still going on. Glad to be part of it.
That's it.
Yeah, I don't think I can, unless I refer to my notes that I wrote earlier.
Well, I'd just like to direct your attention to that Old Testament saying that where God says that I see how I've made so many artists but not so much art in the world. And I think that that's probably the way that I look at things. I think I'm very lucky to be part of such an amazing, fantastic movement, which for me changed my life, and I think it's changed and touched the lives of almost everybody that's been involved in it over the years, certainly for the better. And I think Stuckism, its basic essence, is about the realisation of indomitable will as what can be possible if you allow it to be so. You know, moving from that point of where you were in your life to what things can be, and changing things around you, whether that be exposing corruption to the actual essence of painting, and or whatever the hell it is. But that for me is what it's about, and it doesn't get any better than that.
Well, I always had a sense in my life that I was meant to be doing something on a bigger scale, and it never seemed to happen. And eventually, round about 1997, thereabouts, 98, whatever, I decided that I was deluded and that I should accept what I was doing, which was actually a lot of poetry, children's poetry, working in schools. I'd given up art completely, never had any idea that I was going to get back into it. So I thought, well, I'll accept my lot in life. I've got a good life, it's not a problem, I enjoy doing poetry. As soon as I'd done that, about 3 weeks later, something kind of exploded inside me, and it led on to Stuckism. And as soon as Stuckism started, I thought, well, this is it, actually. This is the thing that I've always kind of been waiting for and never known what it is. Something that's going to reach out globally. And that's continued. I must say there's been times when I thought, well, maybe it's run its course, maybe we should call it a day, and then something's propelled it on to the next level. And that seems to be continuing. And I must say, I feel very fortunate to have met the people in the group. A lot of really strong artists whose work I enjoy hugely, whose company I enjoy, whose discourse and intelligence I enjoy and find very, very rewarding. And that, to me, is what makes life worthwhile. those kind of experiences. So I consider that I'm in a very good position. I'm very grateful, and thanks very much for coming along, Ella and Joe.
My pleasure.
Yeah, my pleasure. Really, I haven't plucked my eyebrow.
No.
Fuck mine, so you're in the same club.
其实我完全没有忘记快乐的记忆，不想太多解释，不能改变，不想太多解释，不能改变。其实我完全没有忘记快乐的记忆，不想太多解释，不能改变，不想太多解释，不能改One, two, three, four。其实我完全没有忘